Since my last video, a lot has changed with the BMAD method. It has been simplified, an installer has been added, and there's a lot of exciting new features and improvements. I'm going to walk through step by step, not going to skip anything, and I'm going to show you how to get the BMAD method installed and set up in your IDE of choice. There's a lot of great contributors here to the BMAD method. I want to thank Kvan, Davor, Bacon Pants, Sweet Roll, and Sebastian, and so many of you. There's too many to name, but so many people have been contributing, not only by contributing codes here, but by participating in the discussions and also raising issues, helping me notice problems so I can fix them and help make the BMAD method better and better. A lot of the feedback that I got from V3 was that it was still a little bit hard to understand how to install and get everything going. So I wanted to make this rock solid and super simple. And by the way, let me say the installer for V4 now will also do upgrades. So as new versions of V4 come out, or V5 or wherever this goes, the installer will now also offer to upgrade for you. So if you're in the middle of a project and new enhancements come out in the V4 method of the BMAD method, it will actually non-breaking update your project. And if you've customized anything, it will actually back it up for you or warn you or allow you to override it. It will give you all these choices in a very simple to use installer. I'm going to be showing all of that to you today. But first, I want to show you how you can just get started in 1 minute without doing anything else. And that is come to the BMAD method here. I'll leave a link in the description. Go to the dist folder here. The dist folder is where all of the web bundles are stored. A web bundle is basically all of the assets to get you going so you can use Gemini Gems or ChatGPT or any of the other web LLMs and start talking with the full team of agents that will help you build your product or plan your project. Come to the dist folder, go to Teams, and just click on Team Full Stack. Now this is a TXT file. Download this file. That's going to be in my Downloads folder. I'm going to go into Gemini. We're going to create a new gem here. So we're going to go to Explore Gems, and we're going to create the BMAD Master Agent Orchestrator for a full stack team. So we're going to give this a nice emoji so we can recognize it. So let's just give it this one here, and we will call this BMAD. And I'm going to call it Full Stack Team, or just FST. What the Full Stack Team means is this is a team of agents that will help you plan and develop a full stack web application, which means it has a front end and a back end. If you don't need a front end, you can choose one of the other teams from this dist folder. Here is Team No UI, so this is just for backend or service projects. And then there's Team All. If you really want all 10 agents that are part of the core system, then you can use Team All. But again, we're just going to go with Team Full Stack, and we are going to click this plus button down here, and we are just going to upload a file. And what are we going to upload? We're going to upload what we just downloaded. You can see I've downloaded it here a few times. And we will see that that is now valid because it shows the icon next to the TXT file. And then in here in the instructions, I'm just going to paste, and you can also get this out of the README, but the nice thing now with V4 is everything is self-contained in one single file that you need to upload. You never need to upload more than one file to get this going. In V3, there was 6 files that you had to upload for each agent. It's all now self-contained, including the orchestrator. So now you only need one command here. All you need to do is click Save, wait for this, and now the gem BMAD FST has been created, and we can start chatting with it. So now we'll go here and we'll click Chat. Now, if you don't know what to do with this, I will just show you really quick. Just think of it as if you were talking to me or I'm talking to you. And the first thing I would say to you is hello. So I'm just going to greet BMAD here and tell it hello. But it's loading all of this information. And I would, recommend that you read this the first time you use it. And it's going to tell you some of the things that it can do. But most importantly, if you don't know what this can really do, you can just press star help here. Now you can go back to the V3 video that I did about 3 weeks ago. I'll post the link right here. And this goes into a lot of detail about how to theoretically use the BMAD method, which agents to use, how to go through the workflow. But the BMAD agent itself here, which is now called the BMAD Orchestrator in this gem, is going to be much more helpful and tell you all of the different things it can do. And it will also tell you which agents are available here in the bundle and how to access them. So if you want to start talking to the business analyst, you can just run that command there. and on and on. But there's one more key feature in here that I want to show you that is going to be so helpful for you now with V4. And that is just do star, and then we're going to say KB-mode. Now this is going to load the full knowledge base that the BMAD method or the BMAD orchestrator has access to. And this is going to be your guide. So you can keep this open in the web browser. And when you're not sure what to do, whether you're in the IDE or in the web here, this will give you advice. So it's going to tell you just some of the things that it can talk to you about, some of the options, how to get started, and it's, going to give you a lot of information here. But once this is done, you can actually have a discussion with it and ask it about any of this stuff. But this is going to show you how to get started with the method, how to use different web IDEs, what the purposes of the different core agents are, and it goes on and on. But again, that is not the extent of the information. You can actually ask it very specific things. For example, how do I get started in Cursor? So here it's going to show you, and this is what I'm actually about to demonstrate also. So you know what? This is enough of the web agent. Go back and watch video part 3 on the V3 of the BMAD method, and it goes over a lot more detail in how to use Web Gemini. But let's actually get to installing this so you can use this in your IDE. All right, and as promised, I'm going to do this from scratch with nothing installed whatsoever already. So you can use npx or you can use npm to install the BMAD method. Now, npm, npx, that is Node. And don't worry if your project is, Python or C# or Ruby or whatever it is, C++, it doesn't matter. The Node is only used for the installer to copy assets and configure them properly for your project. But you are going to need Node 20 installed just to have access to the installer. First of all, if you come to the BMAD method GitHub, you will notice that it does show the version here, and it also shows this Node requirement. Again, this is just for the installer. You saw in the web, we didn't have to use Node. Obviously, we just downloaded and copied the file that we wanted to use. And, there are ways to also just copy the files over, but I highly recommend using this installer. By the way, we do have a Discord community. I'll mention that again. So you can click here and you can actually join our Discord community. If you have questions, I'm on there. And many other people are on there quite frequently, and we will be able to help you out and get going with your own projects, or if you're having issues or having trouble understanding something in the BMAD method, or even if you have feedback, again, please join the Discord community. We'd love to see you in there. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you 2 ways to get started with the BMAD method. And the first one does not even require cloning this repository. If you don't have Node installed, whether you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can just Google Node and download it. There's installers. It'll get you going. It's very simple. Just follow the instructions. Once you have Node working, you can do Node-V and see that you have at least Node 20. You are ready to go. Now, in this folder, this is my dev folder. And this is a technique that I've used throughout almost all of my career, is I like to keep all of my projects under a dev folder. So if you see under my user directory, I have a dev folder. I've actually called it dev-bmc. And in here, I have a few projects. Now you'll notice I don't have the BMAD code here. I have this digest service. This is a project that I started in the last video, at the end of the last video. And I did work on it a little bit since then, but that is done with V3. And so I'm going to show you in a bit how to upgrade a V3 project. So what I'm going to do here from the terminal is I'm going to do np x-ray, and then I'm just going to say bmad-method, and then I'm going to say install. And now it's going to ask you if you are okay with installing BMAD method. This is going to put it into the cache of NPM and make it globally available on your system so you can use it over and over again without actually having to download and clone the whole GitHub repo. So I'm going to say yes. It's going to set that up, and now we are in the actual installer. And the first thing you have to do here is you do have to give it a project directory. I'm going to choose new digest service just because there's nothing in there aside from a starter template. And since there's no existing BMAD agent or BMAD method in there, it's going to know that this is a new install. And we have multiple options here. Expansion packs are coming. That's a beta feature right now, but this is going to add more functionality into the BMAD method, such as game development, some business features, some fun features. A lot of cool stuff is coming with that. But we're just going to go with the complete installation, and I recommend doing this. It even says recommended. This is going to give you all the core agents of the BMAD method. Here are some of those beta expansion packs that we have. You can select them with the spacebar if you want to, but I'm going to leave those off for now, and I'm just going to hit enter to skip that. Now here, you can select your IDE. I'm going to select Cursor and Claude-Code because I use both within the same IDE. But just to show you, I'm going to also select Roo Code and Windsurf. And very soon, within the next few days, there will be a few more IDEs listed here. But if your IDE is not listed here, don't worry. All this does is set up rules, and I will show you how to use the BMAD method without even using rules if your IDE is not currently listed here. But just know that it will be here very soon. So I'm going to hit enter, and now it's going to ask if we also want those web bundles. So when I downloaded that TXT file and put it in the gem, I had to download that from the web, right? The better thing to do here is just install them either here into your project. You can say yes, and then it'll put a folder with all of the possible web bundles in your folder. I'm going to do that just so I can show you what happens. I'm just going to select all of them, and you can always delete them if you don't want them or experiment with the different ones. But let's just accept all the web bundles, and I'm going to let it go to this default location. So now a lot of text is out there. But now let's just open it up and see what actually installed. So I'm going to type code, and then I'm going to type the digest service. And this is going to open up Cursor to our project. All it did was it added the BMAD core. It also set up some Cursor rules with all the agents. Now I did Windsurf here, and obviously I'm not using Windsurf, but this is if you're using Windsurf, it's following a very similar convention. And we also have Claude commands here. To get going in Cursor, if you want to set up actual custom agents, you have two options. One option is to just rely on the rules, and I'm going to show you what these rules look like. If we look at the PM, for example, these are what are called manual rules, and that is because always apply is false, globs is empty, and there's no description. When you do that, that means the only way this rule is activated is manually by typing the @ symbol and then the name of the agent. So instead of setting up a bunch of custom modes, and by the way, Cursor does limit you to 5 custom modes max, and you'll see there's 10 agents here. But if you want to use an agent that you have not set up as a custom mode, and this is the same in Windsurf, by the way, you can just type @ and then you can type the name of the agent. So if we want to talk to the PM, we can just do that. And then we are going to look for this icon that looks like a ruler. And now I can either just hit enter to load it, or I can tell it hello. And you can see this is just the stock agent. I didn't select a custom mode here. And this is using Claude Force on it. So now that it's finished loading that, you can see that this is just like if we were in the web. This is the product manager. He can do different things for us. We can type the *help command. So we can just type *help and see what the PM is able to do for us. Okay, now I want to show you one other way to install before we go forward and show you how to actually set up the agents and start using the agents in here to get going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete these first of all. I'm going to delete all of these. I'm going to get it back basically to the state it was in. I'm even going to clear out this context just so there's no remnants of the project. I'm going to show you how instead of using npx, you can use npm. So let's go over to the GitHub. And then now what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this link here. And I'm going to clear this out. And now again, if we remember, we have only these 3 folders. I'm just going to do git clone. And then I'm going to paste that URL. And now that's going to give us the BMAD method locally here. Now I have the BMAD method. So now I'm just going to do code, BMAD method. And this is my preferred way of actually working with and interacting with the BMAD method. This is everything that was in GitHub, exactly what we were looking at before, but now we have all the code downloaded locally. Take some time and read through this. It's not as long as it looks. It's very simple. But if you want to get into the nuts and bolts of how the BMAD method works beyond working with the agent, this docs folder has documents for all of the IDEs that I showed you, and like I said, more will be coming soon. Plus, you can view the core architecture of how the BMAD method works in Cursor, or excuse me, also in VS Code. And you can see here's the system architecture of how it's all put together. We can also see what are the core agents of the BMAD V4 method. It's made up of agents, agent teams, workflows, templates, tasks, checklists, data files, such as the knowledge base. how it processes templates. There's been a lot of improvements in V4. So, if you're familiar with the method already, or if you've watched some of my videos, you can come through here and you can learn a lot more about how this is actually architected, and over time start understanding the nuts and bolts of how this works. And you'll be better equipped to also make this method truly your own by doing your own modifications, or maybe even contributing to the BMAD method. Again, would love to have people contribute expansion packs or even improvements to the core system, because it's not perfect yet. It's an ever-evolving system as the landscape of AI tooling is constantly also changing and getting more powerful. Now, you'll notice in here it is called BMAD Core and not .BMAD Core. When it installs, it is going to install it with the .BMAD Core to your project. One other thing to point out with the BMAD Core is when it insults, the agent sometimes insults me, but when the BMAD Core method installs, there is also a core configuration file that is going to be added. But just know that this basically controls a few things, mostly for the Scrum Master and the developer agent, which are the two most important agents in this whole system. Because the Scrum Master, if you remember from the previous video, is the one that is going to make the absolute detailed instructions for the developer agent. And then the developer agent is going to only rely on story files with those very detailed instructions for it to do its job. You can see in here, there is this dev load always files setting. You can configure this, and if you want to have certain files that your dev agent always loads, you can do that here. You don't want to put too much in there. And it really does depend on which model you're using, which LLM model you're using, and how much context window you have, right? You want to keep it lean to save context. I like to rely on the Scrum Master actually putting a lot of the details into the detailed story files. By the way, in V4, if for some reason you're using a non-standard format, version 4 of the BMAD method, the Scrum Master will try to make some inferences and use whatever documents you have, because you never want your dev agent to have to load that whole architecture file on its own. It'll blow the context, and most of the time it only needs 1 or 2 details for the specific story or task that it is working on. All right, so let's show how to do the installer now from the BMAD method. Instead of using npx, we are going to use npm. And that is the node package manager, and we're going to use that to run a script. So if we look in our package.json, we have this install BMAD method script here. And we also have some dependencies. Kevin, who I mentioned before, who has contributed a lot to the BMAD method, thank you again, has built a markdown tree parser, special just for the BMAD method to help us shard our documents if we choose to do that, to take our large PRD and large architecture and turn it into smaller documents, so it will be less context for our agents to have to pull in. In other words, our Scrum Master or our developer will only read the small files that they need to, instead of having to consume these large files, making them much more efficient. The first thing we're going to do here is npm install. And this is just going to download basically some of these dependencies, store them in the node modules. None of this is going to be used in your actual project. Again, this is just so we can use this fancy installer. We will now just type npm run, and we are going to do this script right here, install BMAD. And again, this is the same as npx BMAD method install. Now, just like before, if I hit enter, it's going to complain we need a valid path. Now, this is a V3 project that I started with the last video that I did. This was going to be the back end, and I did start developing it, and this is with the V3 method of the BMAD method, because you can see the old BMAD agent is here. And in the docs folder, you can see that our old way of doing V3 is here. We had a PRD, and we had an architecture. Some of the sections in those files have changed to align to a new standard with V4, which is everything that will be sharded into a new document is now Markdown level 2, which means 2 hash marks next to the title. In V4, by having everything conform to the document titles being the layer 2 levels, it's now very easy to shard the documents and get the documents out that we need, which I will show you in a bit. With V3, the PRD did produce the epic files, and the architecture produced all of these other files here. This is not the way we want it formatted for V4. And of course, we don't want this BMAD agent. Copy the full path, come over here and paste that in here. Now, we're going to do complete installation so we can get everything added for us. We're not going to choose any of the expansion packs. This time I'm going to turn on all of these. I'm not going to do the pre-built web bundles this time because I already have them here in the dist folder, so I don't need to also copy them. But with NPX, if you want to have them locally, then you would choose yes there. But I'm going to choose no. And now here's the key thing is it's noticed that we have a V3 installation in the folder we're trying to go to. So we have a couple options here. We can either upgrade from V3 to V4, which is what I recommend, or we can install it alongside. And then basically what you do is you would manually piecemeal migrate yourself. But let's just go with the recommended. And now it is going to warn us of two different things. Epic files have already been found. This is actually a great thing. It recognized that epics were there, and it just conforms already to the V4 method. So right now the epics are here, but what it's going to do is it's going to take these and it's going to move those to a PRD folder, which is like what it's saying right here. And it will also have an index.md, which is a new convention that allows the agents to know what files are available easily by just looking at a single file. And then it's also going to tell us that we don't need to shard the PRD after the upgrade, but we will still want to shard the architecture. So anyways, continue with upgrade, yes or no. I'm going to say yes, and now it is done. Now there is some important information here that you can read, but it told you the V3 files have been backed up. The V4 structure has been installed to a new folder called .bmad core. All the documents have been migrated, 12 files and 3 epics. So it's kind of warning you that you'll want to update. If you already set up some custom modes, you will want to change those to use the V4 agents in the digest service. And now you can see there's a lot of changes here. First of all, I selected Roo, and you'll notice Roo modes, whether you're doing an install or an upgrade, is going to get installed to the root of your project. And these are custom modes, just like we would create in Cursor. The key here is that we have BMAD core, and that is the core installation. We have our core config, our install manifest, which lets us know in the future if we need to make another update to anything in the BMAD core as the project evolves. Now our docs folder, we still have our PRD and our architecture that it found. Now maybe you had some custom files in here. Don't worry, they're not lost. You can still go back and find everything because everything was moved to a backup folder, including your BMAD agent, just in case you customize something and you want to get it out of there. But if you don't need it, just delete it. And then you can check your docs. So the docs has all the stories that we were working on. We don't need that because the stories are retained here. So the stories that we were working on are still here, and they still follow the same format in V4. The PRD, we're not going to convert it. We're just going to leave it as is. But the architecture, we're going to want to actually convert it to the V4 version of the architecture. No matter what IDE you're using, though, you can use all of these tasks without using the agents. We're going to go to the BMAD core folder. We're going to go right to the tasks folder. We're going to find the doc migration task here. And I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to say regular agent here. Yeah, I would suggest using the thinking mode. That's the one with the little brain here. Claude Force on it is great. And then we're just going to say run. I'm going to drag in the doc migration task. This is a great way to use any task quickly without even needing to worry about having an agent loaded. Run doc migration task on. And we're going to take our V3 version of the architecture and drop it there. And that'll do it. And that'll basically then convert it. I just want to show you that this is just as easy to do in Claude-Code, though. So in Claude-Code, we will just start Claude. And here we are now in Claude-Code, and it's the same thing. So again, we're going to say run, doc migration task. We're going to say on, architecture. And I'm going to give it an extra option here just to make sure that it really does the right thing. And I'm going to say using the, and since I know this was from the V3 architecture, I'm going to specifically use this template right here that says architecture template.md. In V4, there's a few architecture templates to support different types of workflows. If you're starting with V4 from scratch, you'll want to just use, I would say, for almost everything, full stack architecture. This will actually put your front end and your back end all in a single architecture document, whether you're doing a mono repo or a poly repo. It keeps it all self-contained. It makes the planning much easier. And now instead of having 2 agents, a design agent architect and a regular architect, the full stack architect now knows how to build both front end and back end, or design your front end and back end projects. All right, so anyways, we have again told it to run the migration task on this architecture file using this template. We're going to hit enter here. And we're going to let this churn. So this is going to take a while to run. So while it's running, I'm going to describe a little bit about what it's doing. First of all, it is going to read the existing document after it understands what the migration task is. And you'll notice with Claude-Code, it actually breaks it down automatically into these nice tasks, so you can actually see how it's thinking and working step by step. So it is going to read the doc migration task first, so it understands just what it's supposed to do. It's going to understand that we are doing an architecture specifically, so there are instructions here for architecture documents right here. So now it's reading the input architecture file, which is the V3 version. It's then going to read the architecture template V4 version and understand maybe where sections have been renamed, or some things have stayed the same. Some level 3s have become level 2s, and some titles have just changed. It's going to calculate all of that. It's going to ensure that we preserve everything and do not lose any information. But the key is to align all of the level 2s with the level 2 that are in the template. That way, when we shard our document, it's going to shard it exactly as if it were created from V4 to begin with. Okay, and it looks like it's finished here. We can see that it did finish, and it says it preserved all of the content and migrated to all the proper level 2 headings. So let's now check our document here. And we can see here that we do have, yes, this definitely looks like V2, and I know because the changelog comes early. And we do have our sections, and a quick way to check is we should have high-level architecture, tech stack, data models, components, external APIs, core workflows, REST API spec, database schema, source tree, infrastructure. This is great. This did an awesome job. All of our coding standards are now self-contained, and that will become a file that the dev agent uses. Testing strategy, security, checklists, perfect. And then as far as these next steps, I will actually just delete these because I have already talked to the design architect, and I've already done the developer handoff piece in the web. And we also don't need this information here, so I will just delete that. Save this. I do not need the backup. There was no starter template, so we can also get rid of that. So now I'm going to show you how to actually shard this document, and you don't have to do it manually. And again, this is going to benefit you later when you want potentially your dev agent, but usually your SM agent to consider a very specific file. It won't have to load the whole document when it doesn't need to. So let's just come down here to Claude. So I'm going to go back to task, and now I'm going to look for shard doc. And so I'm going to say again, run shard doc on. So here is our updated architecture. We will just go like this and hit enter. And it's going to give us an option. We can either use the MD tree command from the globally installed KVAN Markdown tree parser, or we can try with manual sharding. I recommend not doing manual sharding because that's going to use your LLM. It's going to take a lot of time, and you're just going to waste credits. Instead, what you'll want to do is, if you haven't done this already, you can just do the npx command, much like we did for the BMAD method. You can run that in a terminal, and then you will globally have this Markdown tree parser available to you. It's really awesome, and it doesn't actually get installed to your project itself. Even if you do the npm install, this will install it into your global npm cache, so you can use this great utility from KVAN in any project. If it finds it, it will just run the command for us, and we'll see it go, and we'll see how quick it is. So here it is going to do it. It's going to say use MD tree to shard the architecture. And this will work with any LLM as long as it can find that MD tree command. And boom, we're basically already done. And I know it's already done because the architecture is already here. And look at this. All of these documents are now perfectly sharded from the level 2. Isn't that amazing? This used to take forever in the V3 method, and it was sometimes error prone if there was weird formatting in your document. Now, as long as you have level 2s in your document, you're going to get perfect documents for everything that you need. And now, for example, we can look at our source tree, and it's now a self-contained file. So if we ever want to give the source tree to the LLM, we now have the source tree. Actually, before we use our Scrum Master, I realized that there was one update to the BMAD method since we actually installed to this digest service. So if we come over here, what I want to show you now is how we can just make sure that we have the latest of the BMAD method. And now here we have some changes. You can see there was an update to the version. So now if I do npm run, and then install BMAD again. It's the exact same command. And then just like before, I'm going to copy this folder here. So I'm just going to copy the full path. And what's going to be really cool is we're going to see that now this is going to realize that V4 is over there. And it's going to say that it found V4, existing installation. Do we want to update the existing installation because it knows that we have newer changes? We can do yes. So that is very cool. And now to know that we actually got the changes, we can look at the install manifest and we can see that we're now on 4.10.1. These are all the stories that we were working on with the V3 video that I did a few weeks ago. This is about as far as we got. But we can see that this story was completed. In Cursor, we can add a custom mode. Let's do that. Let's just add a quick custom mode. So what I will do is instead of using the rule-based custom mode, instead I'll just copy the same thing here. And you can get it from this file, or you can also get it from the agent. But you go to the agent, you go to the Scrum Master, and we are just going to select all of this. Maybe you don't see add custom modes here. This is an annoying thing in Cursor. You just go to settings, you go to Cursor settings, you're going to go to the chat tab. They keep moving this option around all over the place, but under the chat tab, they have custom modes beta. Make sure that this is toggled on. If it's off, you will not see this option here. But now that we do have that toggled on, again, we can go here, go to custom modes, go to advanced option. We already copied the SM agent. So we're just going to give it a title up here. We're going to call it SM, and we are going to paste all of that contents in here. Now we are done. While I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and add the dev mode while I'm at it. So same thing. We will go to advanced options, and now we will paste those dev instructions in there. So I'm just having to say draft the next story. And what the Scrum Master does is it will actually look for this draft next story task, which is right here. And that task basically says, find the highest numbered story here. Make sure that it actually has a status of done. If it does have a status of done, it is then going to look to the PRD folder and figure out, okay, that last story done was story 2.2, so it's going to check Epic 2, and it's going to see if there's any more stories. So here, let's do something different. Let's go out of our digest service. Let's go back to the BMAD method. And actually, I have another project that I mentioned called New Digest Service. And this is basically a reset of the other project, but this is now a brand new nothing but our template. So all we have is a starter template here. It has just a quick math demo thing. I use this just to basically get back-end projects going quickly because it has NPM and testing and everything else prettier configured exactly like I like it. And all I have here is our PRD, which is a V4 PRD and a V4 architecture. Nothing else. As a matter of fact, I don't even have Git here. So as a matter of fact, the very first thing I would do before doing anything else is just to git init. I've said this in previous videos and I'll say it again. In between each story, you always want to commit your changes once you know that it's working and push it to the remote. And that way, if your agent goes off the rails, don't just try to keep going in circles. Throw away all your changes and start over. Sometimes that's the best thing that you can do. And when I say start over, get rid of your local changes and maybe go back to the beginning of, if you're on story 3, go back to the beginning of story 3. If you're constantly saving and pushing your changes to the remote, it's very easy to do that. Git commits -m. You could also use the LLM for this or the agent for this, but it's easy enough just to do git init commits. Oops, and rookie mistake there. I forgot to do git add all. That will actually stage everything for the commits. And now I will do the commit message, and it's all committed. And so now we are in good shape. So now if I were to screw something up, I could just revert back to this state very easily. Or just imagine we worked through the whole web flow. We talked to the PM and the architect. They gave us the PRD document and the architecture document, so we save it to this docs folder. And we are just going to get the path of the project. We are going to do npm run, and then we're going to do install BMAD, just like before. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paste in the path that we just copied. And so that is the path to our new service where we do not have BMAD method installed already. And we're going to do the complete installation. We're going to skip the expansion packs. We're going to select Cursor and Claude-Code for the rules. We are not going to include the web bundles because we already have them in our dist folder here. We've looked at that before. And that installed everything for us. It is done. It is quick. And now we have our BMAD core here. We have all of our agents, our tasks, our templates. We're ready to go. We have Claude and we have Cursor. And so I will just do git commit again because I like to actually save this in version control. And so now we can say BMAD installed. I'm going to do npm install since this is a node project. And since I already started with a starter project, there are dependencies in here already, so I might as well go ahead and get those installed. So those are now out of the way. So we will start Claude here. And just like we did before, this is our first time using it in this project, so we say yes. So I'm going to select the doc sharding task. So we're going to go to tasks. We're going to select somewhere here, shard doc. We're going to say run shard doc against, and this is going to be very fast because these are V4 documents. I just want to show you how smooth this is with both a PRD and an architecture. Now the PRD is here and all of the epics are actually in here. Now shard the architecture, and it should know, but I'll just say with the same task using the markdown tree tool. I don't want it to go through the whole thing of deciding whether it should or not. That should just let it know to use the same markdown tree parser. It is. It's going to use the command. It's going to use it on the architecture. So giving the LLM more information does make it much more efficient. So now we have our architecture also perfectly sharded, just like we did in the legacy application before. We're going to tell the Scrum Master draft story 1.1, or you could say the next story, but I know it's 1.1 in this case, so might as well help it along. So now in this case, the Scrum Master again is going to use that task. It's going to read the core config. It's going to understand what it needs to do. It's going to load Epic 1 and find that story 1.1 is the first story. So here it is. It's looking for it. And then what it's going to do is it's going to start inspecting all of these architecture documents. Based on the details of that first story, it is going to look at, what the directory structure is going to be, what type of technologies we're using, what it needs to know to create this very first story. Here's where it's saying no stories directory exists yet, so it is going to create it. And this is where you want to use, I would say, your most powerful thinking models, because this really does, especially as it gets more complex, need to take in a lot of information to really create these detailed stories. Don't go cheap on your model usage at the story drafting time or at the development time, but use your thinking models in story drafting. You'll have much better results. And then when you're developing, a lot of times you can use your non-thinking models because the story file itself is going to be so detailed that it will have very clear instructions to follow. So here, we're just going to accept this and assume that this is good. This is a very first story. When I do these projects, my first story and the first epic is always, just getting the boilerplate set up. And even if we started with a simple boilerplate project, just making sure that a lot of the initial things are in place. But we can see that the agent put in a lot of good information here for the developer too. So it doesn't have to read from other files. So now, as always, I will start a new chat and I'm going to review this on my own, assume it's good. So I'm just going to change this to approved. And now, instead of using Cursor there, let's use Claude. Let's switch it up, but I could use Cursor and just switch to the dev agent. But I just want to show you that, again, no matter what IDE you're using, it's pretty much the same process, right? Whether you're doing it from a rule or a custom mode or even dragging in a task or dragging in an agent. You can also just drag an agent in and say, assume this persona, right? That's another way to do it. But I'm going to do the Claude command, and since I have the Claude rules, I can now see all of my agents are available here. So I can select the dev agent by up and down arrow. And now This is just loading the dev persona, and it should greet me as James, the developer, which it just did. And James is our full stack developer. We did instruct the dev agent to load any files that it can find from this core config. So if you remember, in this core config, anytime the developer comes online, it is always going to read these files and kind of put it into its core memory so it operates with those. So here, it did load all of the available files. It seems like 2 files were missing. Oh, a debug log, and that is because we are not using a debug log yet, so that is fine. And it also could not find docs architecture project structure. So that is one that we want to check on. Docs architecture. Oh, and you know what? I think we named this file wrong here because project structure is now going to be called source tree. So what I can do is if that happens, I can just call this source tree and we are now in good shape. Now I can just tell it to develop the next story or start development. And it will always look for the highest numbered story in the stories folder. And it will halt if it doesn't find any stories. But it's also going to make sure that it finds one that's in the approved status or in development. If something is in draft or done, it will halt and it will say that it can't find the story to develop. But if I do start development, hopefully this will find that story. Now, to make it a little bit more efficient, but you can see right there, it did find the right story and it will notice that that's approved and it's going to start developing. But to make it more efficient, what I would honestly do is just drag in the story and say, develop this story. It won't have to do that searching and it'll save a few tokens and just make it a little bit more efficient. Next time, we can do a full project build together from the web through the IDE, nothing but product development or project development, step by step, how I build applications. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me. Please like and subscribe. And again, come join us in the community. Check us out in the Discord or in the discussion forums, and we'll talk to you there. So we'll see you next time here on BMAD Code.